Hello and welcome. Episode 7 of Noontime here at the FTN Network. I'm Ryan Noonan. Excited to talk football with you today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the conference championships that happened over the weekend. Touch briefly, ever so briefly, on the Super Bowl. We'll get into that a little bit more next week. But an NFL Smorgasbord episode here to talk a little bit about some of the other things that have happened in the world of football in the NFL over the last few weeks. Front office changes, coaches changes, coordinators. We'll take a look at who's got money to spend, money to burn. We have some possible major quarterback changes that could very much shift the landscape as we dig into best ball season. Underdog opened up their best ball product today, so we need to be thinking about who's a free agent. How can these things shape the market? So hit the subscribe button here, hit the like button, subscribe will make sure you don't miss any of the other shows here at FTN. If you're new and unfamiliar with the FTN network, hit me in the comments. Would love to help you out. We have basically everything. If you are into sports speculation in any sense, whether that is season-long traditional fantasy leagues, if you get into the daily games, we have FTN Fantasy, we have FTN Daily, then we also have FTN Bets, as we obviously every week, month it seems, we're opening up new states, and the betting platforms continue to grow, so we definitely have all those things. Promo code Noonan will get you 10% off of any of those subscriptions. So football is slowing down in one sense from a games played standpoint, but from a speculation standpoint, there is going to be stuff all season long. We obviously are deep into the NBA season. PGA is up and running. NHL, MLB is closer than it seems. So definitely want to join us over at the FTN network. So yeah, before we dig into any of the other stuff, let's talk briefly about what happened over the weekend, the conference championships, Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes going back to the Super Bowl. This is 2 out of 3 years for Mahomes. Very likely, very close to being 3 consecutive years for Mahomes. And yeah, I mean, in hindsight, looking back on it, obviously hindsight in handicapping is very easy to do. We had a situation where we had Patrick Mahomes laying 3 points at home, and it feels like a fish play to have not jumped all over that. In hindsight, there's 2.5s out there for a little bit too. But again, obviously the questions surrounding Mahomes himself coming into the game, they had other issues, offensive line issues. Sammy Watkins didn't play. Rashad Breeland, who's one of their best cover corners, he had some issues heading into the week and was not going to be full strength. So there was some questions, and obviously the Bills have been one of the analytics friendly teams this year. They definitely are more aggressive on early down passing situations. Josh Allen has really become a surprisingly dynamic quarterback, and the Chiefs people have been down on, right? It's crazy. They won the Super Bowl last year. They didn't play any of their starters in week 17. That game out the window, because technically they were 14-2, but no one really played. They basically won 26 out of their last 27 meaningful football games, including the playoffs last year. It's no surprise that they are still here representing the AFC as the best team in the conference and have opened as 3-point favorites in the Super Bowl. And yeah, like I said, we'll dig into that next week. We'll dig into props, dig into some game analysis, all the exotics and all that cool things that come along with Super Bowl betting. But yeah, for now, we'll skip on that. On the other side, listen, you could spend all the time you want hating on Tom Brady. Good luck with it. It has probably been a very long 20 years for you, because he is going to his 10th Super Bowl in 21 seasons. That was his 14th conference championship game. This is his 10th Super Bowl appearance. Guys don't go to 10 Super Bowls. I don't care if you're playing offensive guard or special teams. To be the quarterback, play the most important position in all of sports, and take 10 teams there it's an incredible, incredible feat. And he played better than you think he did this year. He was aggressive. I mean, we really look back at some of the Tom Brady was washed narratives the last few years in New England, and I think it really had a lot more to do with the surrounding cast there. And, look at this year. Leads the league in average depth of target. The only quarterback to be top 5 in both average depth of target and quick release. The amount of time he had the ball in his hands. He knew that his offensive line was a little bit limited. They had a ton of weapons, and he was good. He was good enough to get it done yesterday. He wasn't great, but he made enough plays in the first half, and, they held on. They really, again, hanging 31 was solid. Again, getting out to a nice early lead in that first drive was huge, even though it was frustrating because they were run, pass, run, pass, run, pass. They got lucky. It's very hard to sustain drives that way, but they got the job done. And more so than anything, I feel like in hindsight, Green Bay really lost that game. Obviously, the two plays that jump out are the field goal attempt in the fourth with about 2 minutes and 20 seconds or so left. 3 failed attempts inside the 10 to gain any yards, to do anything. You had the Rodgers option where it looked like he had a pretty clear path to run. Maybe not get in, but at least maybe get the ball down to the 2 or 3. Changes the play call. Maybe makes them a little bit more aggressive on fourth down and not kick the field goal. But, he tries to jam one into Davante Adams. Again, hard to fault him there. That's typically a pretty optimal choice to make. But again, I don't understand the field goal attempt there. You're down 8. You need a touchdown. You're already inside the 10. And yes, they had all 3 timeouts. After the game, Floor had said, it was on the right side of the 2-minute warning. So technically we had 4 timeouts. They didn't even kick the ball out of the end zone. If you wanted to leverage that before the 2-minute timeout, kick the ball out of the end zone, force them to make a play before the 2-minute warning, and he didn't even do it. He got bailed out by Mickens sliding and stopping, but very wisely, the Buccaneers took advantage of that. They threw on the first play before the 2-minute warning, 9-yard completion, come back from the 2-minute warning. Smartly, the Packers take the offsides penalty to create first down. And then, as you know, you get the pass interference penalty and the game's over. Like, you have Aaron Rodgers with the ball inside the 10. Your defense hadn't done anything to stop Tampa Bay all day. They had 3 turnovers in the second half. That was the only time that they really even stopped them. Like, they were Brady mistakes, to be honest. And back-to-back picks, they went 3 and out. Lost opportunities for the Packers. You have the MVP of the league inside the 10 with a chance to win the game. If you need to make a decision, who is going to win me this football game? Aaron Rodgers right here, or maybe Aaron Rodgers if the defense makes a stop. It's unforgivable. I just don't understand how that happens in that situation. And here we are now. Rodgers obviously is talking about questions of his future and how the offseason is going to be, how it's going to shake out there in Green Bay. Obviously, they added Jordan Love in the draft, which was, a very questionable decision. And yeah, hard to think he doesn't come back. He has 3 years left on a deal, and what it would take to move him. They're not going to release him. I can't imagine he's going to retire. He's 37. Which is obviously an age that we would typically see quarterbacks maybe retire in the past, but we're seeing these Brady, Breeze, Rodgers guys that just have shown this long-term ability to sustain top-level performance, and hard to imagine him going out on an MVP season with this bad taste in his mouth. So, yeah, shocking that the Packers weren't able to take advantage of that. The Buccaneers, again, 3-point dogs here in the Super Bowl. 57 is where it opened in the total. I think it's down 56 and a half at most books, which is a lot of points. But again, these offenses, the way that they've been playing of late, you're seeing pretty consistently 30 a game from the Bucs over the last 6 to 7 weeks. We know what the Chiefs can do when they are right. What we're seeing from Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill is unbelievable. So the Buccaneers are going to have to play a lot better next week. And again, trying to stay high level. They are not going to be able to, Brady can't have those interceptions. They're going to have to play a lot cleaner. Your defense is going to have to make some plays in the back half. Obviously, this is a rematch from week 12 early in the season, where it was the Tyreek Hill game, basically, which is the season, essentially, is a Tyreek Hill game. But yeah, he blew up in the first half. They got up to a 17-zip lead, ended up holding on, winning 27-24. But yeah, I mean, Kelsey's unbelievable. We've seen the evolution over the years of the slot receiver, right? Brandon Stokely, Wes Welker back in the Manning Brady days, and then Edelman and guys today. But what Travis Kelce is doing to take the tight end position to another level, because even more so than Gronk, incredible historic inline blocker. Like, he is part of why he's so good is that he is. That's an element of his game that is second to none. It allowed the Patriots to be really multiple because they could disguise pre-snap what they were doing. Kelce really is an extension. He's just a bigger bodied slot receiver, and he's unstoppable. And if it's just an unbelievable combination. His incredible hands, athleticism, size speed combination for him is great. And now they've gone from making Tyreek Hill a gadget 4 to 5 target guy to giving him Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas type workload. And look what happened. I mean, he's been unbelievable this year. Again, another 9 receptions for 71 yards yesterday. A lot of those created on his own. That one big play that was basically maybe a 20-yard pitch and catch, and he just takes it 71 yards and flips the field. And they don't have an answer for him on Tampa speed-wise. I mean, he was dominant against Jamal Dean and Carlton Davis in that first matchup. They're going to have to get creative as far as what they do there. But, yeah, it's going to be a great game. Look forward to it. Obviously, the narratives around the new GOATs and the old GOAT who hasn't left, has not stopped goating. But it's going to be – it's whatever network, I forget what network it is, and with CBS, it's got to be a network dream to have a Mahomes-Brady Super Bowl. Everyone and their brothers watching the game anyway, but all of these different fun narrative pieces that can come out of something like this where, they were conference rivals for a little bit and now having to meet in the Super Bowl and Brady's first shot in the NFC. Going to be great. So very excited, looking forward to that. But, yeah, we'll table that for now. Like I said, we'll dig into that next week, kind of understanding a little bit of all the great ways to go about betting on the Super Bowl. We'll hopefully unpack that here next week. Pretty soon having guests, too, so I'm not sure if I'll do that next week or not. But, yeah, we're moving into that time. So, yeah, a lot of other news going on in the world of the NFL outside of on-the-field stuff over the last few weeks, and have really not touched on it, but I want to dig in because now, like I said, we have season's ending, but it's not. We have best ball starting. We have draft coming up. We'll bet on the drafts and look at different ways to leverage that market. So we need to know what's going on as far as free agency. We need to know what's going on with coaching changes, GM changes in the league, and how these things impact rosters. And those will impact our decisions when we are on the clock in best ball drafts or when we're trying to speculate on certain draft picks and positions based on what else is going on. So let's take a look at first the cap space. Who's got money to spend heading into the offseason here? So we know Jacksonville is on the clock. They have the first pick in April's draft, and they also have the most money to spend. A really good spot for Jacksonville to really alter their franchise. Same thing with the New York Jets. They're number 2 on the clock in the draft. They have a decision to make at the quarterback position around Sam Darnold. That's a big one, obviously. There are lots of decisions and rumors and things going on there. Same thing with the Colts. Just recently retired Phillip Rivers, quarterback, void there. Otherwise, it's a pretty talented roster on both sides, and they have money to spend. So pretty bullish on the Colts futures. And you see the Patriots, really those 4 teams have a ton of money. And, Patriots have a lot of questions to address. They'll need all $55 million there to really kind of figure out where they're going. And then you see lots of other teams that are, going to have to make some decisions here. Bengals have some money freed up with A.J. Green coming off the books. Obviously you want to build around their young quarterback, Joe Burrow. Tampa Bay is going to run it back with Tom Brady again next year, but they have some impactful offensive players that are free agents. Chris Godwin being the most prominent, Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, lots of guys there. Chargers have some changes in the coaching realm. They also have Hunter Henry, free agent. What are they going to do there? Miami, plethora of picks. They did last year as well. Continue to rebuild. $25 million at their disposal. They got to figure out what to do. Again, continue to be bullish on Miami and their front office and all the things that they got going on. Washington's got to address the quarterback position. They have lots of questions. New general manager there as well. Big one at the bottom there, two Cowboys. $17 million under the cap with a big decision at quarterback. Biggest decision, biggest free agent. And before we dig into that, though, there are two other quarterbacks that are going to help shape the landscape of this offseason. We recently had Matthew Stafford say, hey, 12 years in Detroit has been enough. 12 years in Detroit, probably enough for anyone. Good for him. Wasn't enough to get it done. 3 playoff appearances in his 12 years. And yeah, he is 2 years left on his deal, but looks like they're trying to accommodate him. And there are teams out there like the Colts that have quarterback issues. He feels like a just perfect fit for Indy, kind of step in and take them to the next level. I love to see that landing spot for him. Makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you mentioned, the Washington football team has some questions. There are lots of teams. There are teams at the top of the draft, and it's a quarterback-heavy draft. The top 10 in this draft is going to have probably at least 4 quarterbacks, and that makes things a little harder for some of the free agents. But these two with Stafford, and then obviously the kingpin of the entire offseason is Deshaun Watson and all that's going on there. Pretty adamant. He says he does not want to return to Houston regardless of who is made head coach. It looks like they're in final discussions with Leslie Frazier, been a coach before, been a defensive coordinator in Buffalo the last couple of years. There's a couple other guys in the mix. Eric Bieniemy might get a shot there. In the end, it's the only head coaching position currently not filled. Watson, wherever he goes, it changes the offseason. So 2 places in the NFC or in the AFC East that make a lot of sense of being rumored. Both the Jets and the Dolphins, as you see, they have a lot of money, and they both have draft capital that is worthwhile here as well. The Jets thing makes a lot of sense. The Jets have the number 2 pick in the draft. They also have Sam Darnold, so there are multiple options for the Texans to replenish the quarterback room there as well, right? Do they want the 2nd pick in the draft? Maybe they want Darnold and the 2nd pick. They're probably going to want a bunch of picks. But, Deshaun Watson is a franchise-changing addition. He was amazing this season. They were top 5 offensively in EPA per play, EPA per drop back after week 5 or 6 after they lost, moved on from Bill O'Brien. Continued that after losing Will Fuller to the PED suspension. Really had no semblance of a running game. They were a bottom 5 rushing offense this season. Success rate, EPA, DVOA, any of the key important metrics. It was really just Watson, and he definitely changes a franchise and the franchise's future. He's young. I get why these teams are going after him. Miami again doesn't make quite the sense that maybe New York does. Having drafted Tua last year, but again, I don't know that we saw enough of Tua to be able to make a strong judgment on Tua, but look, we know what Watson is. And if you are in the position that the Dolphins are in with the, again, dearth of picks and free agent money to spend and all those things, if you can bring in a slam dunk, no doubt, plug and play, all pro at quarterback, you do it. You can trade those picks back to the Texans. A lot of the reasons they have all these 1st and 2nd round picks are from the Laramie Tunsil trade of a few years ago. So be interested to see what happens there. Obviously, he is going to be highly coveted. Again, the Patriots need a quarterback. There are a ton of guys that you could see. What does Denver do? They could use a quarterback. Sorry, Drew Luck is not the answer. This feels like something that the Raiders would love to get involved with. Gruden loves him. The one that I would love to see as a fan is the 49ers. Now, I don't know what happens with Garoppolo in the offseason, but that team, outside of having a sure thing at quarterback, is ready to be right back in the Super Bowl again. They had a ton of injuries this season on both sides of the ball and still competed. They were still in the playoff mix somehow in December. They had no business being there. So I mean, I would love to see what we could do with Shanahan and Watson together, with Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. I mean, it'd be a lot of fun to watch. So interested to see what happens with Watson. Probably be, these will probably come up to the draft. It's easier, more than likely done before the draft, but we'll wait and see. Those are going to be the big prominent things that happen. Let's look at some of the coaching changes and some of the things that have happened here so far this offseason. Like I said, Texans are the only ones still waiting on a coach, and I think they're trying to get a feel for what they're doing with Watson first. There is a Seattle offensive coordinator position that's still yet to be filled with, Schottenheimer released there. So those are kind of the big ones that haven't been filled yet. But we'll start with Jacksonville, bringing in Urban Meyer. As you know, Trent Baalke hired as the GM, which I don't love. That signing. You spent the last few years, has been gone for a little bit out of the game, but was with the Niners for a little while. That didn't go so well during some of the Harbaugh years. But we'll see. I mean, Urban Meyer comes in. Urban Meyer's been a guy that's built programs throughout his career. Bowling Green, Utah, took the Utes to, BCS game back in, 04 with Alex Smith at quarterback, and, moved on to Florida, who was obviously a prominent collegiate powerhouse for years. Had slipped a little bit, and then he brings them back and wins a national championship, moves over to Ohio State. Kind of get the theme here. He gets bored and then moves on to something else. Ohio State, again, national championships, and does his thing, and then leaves for health reasons. I hope he's feeling okay. Hope everything's better. But I get the appeal of going to Jacksonville. You saw number one pick in the draft, most money to spend in free agency. I mean, in Florida. So, let's see what happens there. They brought in Darrell Bevell to be the offensive coordinator. Darrell Bevell spent the last few years in Detroit. He's been kind of a run-first guy a lot of his career, though 2 seasons ago, before Stafford got hurt, they led the league by far and averaged up the target. They were very aggressive with Kenny Golladay downfield and Marvin Jones. They have some weapons there, right? I mean, there's DJ Shark, Laviska Shenault. There are some prominent, I think, young, developable pieces there. James Robinson at the running back position. So hopefully they can not turn Trevor Lawrence into a handoff machine and allow him to do what he does well. But I'll be interested to see what happens there with Urban Meyer, who obviously is splashy, and sometimes that's kind of what these ownership groups want to do. Good spot to be, obviously having a lot of money to spend and being the first pick of the draft. Great hire as well for the New York Jets. Robert Saleh obviously seemed like he was going to be a lock to be a coach last year, coming in as the defensive coordinator the last few years in San Francisco. Just his team loves him, and like I said, they had a ton of injuries. They were still a top 5 unit in DVOA defensively somehow, despite trading away one of their best players in the offseason and having a ton of injuries. So good for them. Hard not to be bullish on having Salah there as the addition at the head coaching position. Excuse me. All right. Mike LaFleur coming over as well as the offensive coordinator. LaFleur had been a passing game coordinator, part of the offensive staff with the Niners, obviously working with Shanahan. We should be bullish. They do have some encouraging pieces there on the offensive line, a receiver. They have a lot of other holes to fill, but Salah feels like a great hire, great leader, and someone that if I was a Jets fan, I'd be pretty excited about. So, and I think the LaFleur thing is encouraging too. So good for the Jets. Another one, Arthur Smith lands in Atlanta. Atlanta also hired a new GM as well. Terry Fontenot, I believe, had come over from Seattle, been there for a while. Arthur Smith had spent the last 10 years or so as offensive coach, last 2 offensive years as the coordinator for the Titans. Really created a nice offense there. Took Ryan Tannehill and made him into a top 15 quarterback in this league. Really kind of brought Corey Davis out from the dead after being kind of a disappointment as a top 5 pick for years. They also hired Dean Pease to be the defensive coordinator. That's a great hire. Pease was part of that Titans staff with Arthur Smith for years. Had retired after spending a few years in Baltimore, but to get him out of retirement to coach this defense, really young unit that played very well down the stretch. Once they fired Dan Quinn, moved on, Raheem Morris took over as that interim coach, but that defense played really well. I mean, top 10 unit in EPA per play over the last month, 2 months of the season. And they have some exciting players there. They've drafted there pretty heavily in the first couple rounds over the last few years. So good signing there for the Falcons. Hard not to be bullish on those moves. Dave Rangone is going to be the offensive coordinator. This is going to be an Arthur Smith offense. Rangone had been the passing game coordinator for the Bears for the last couple of years, former Louisville quarterback years ago. But again, it's going to be Smith's program, and hard not to be bullish on the Falcons. They also have a top 4 pick. It's a quarterback heavy draft, and they have a quarterback that's still getting up there, but he's still solid. And Matt Ryan is not the problem, but how long is he going to be there? And they don't have a great cap situation per se. So what are they doing there? That's going to be a big question in the offseason. The Chargers hired Brandon Staley to be the new head coach. Staley had been the defensive coordinator for 1 year with the Rams, taking over for Wade Phillips as he retired. Previously had been with Vic Fangio both in Chicago and in Denver. But, the Rams defense is really good. Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey will help that for sure. But young guy that has a lot of promise. We're seeing this tendency, obviously, going to younger coaches a lot, specifically offensive-minded coaches. Not in this case, but the question here is really around Joe Lombardi. Joe Lombardi looks to be the guy they're hiring to be the offensive coordinator. Had been on the Saints staff for the better part of the last decade or so. That relationship is going to be important because, again, a defensive-minded head coach, and the relationship with Justin Herbert. Herbert having to change offensive coordinators into his second year isn't great, but again, he was fantastic last year, and let's see if they can build on that. Lombardi obviously spending a lot of time with Sean Payton is great, with Drew Brees is great, so that is something we need to look out for moving forward with Justin Herbert. Obviously, we'd love to have continuity there, but it is what it is. It'll be interesting to see. Again, Staley is the head coach. They'll bring on a defensive coordinator, I believe, by name. Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't heard anything there yet. But it, again, will be Staley's concepts as you typically see head coach-wise. All right, the Lions. Dan Campbell comes in as the head coach. They also brought in Brad Holmes to be the general manager. Really a full cleaning of the house there. Holmes had been the director of college scouting under Les Snead with the Rams for the last few years. Now gets a shot as a GM. Dan Campbell gets a head coaching shot. He was with the Saints for the last 5 years. Assistant to the head coach. Not assistant head coach, assistant to the head coach. And then had also been the tight ends coach in Miami previously. We knew that he had that interim role back in 2015 when Joe Philbin got let go. Campbell had that interim role for about 12 games. A lot's been said here. Not going to bang the drum repeatedly about the dude, and he's kind of a bro. Looks like he's been pulled out of a inspirational pep talk video to be a head coach. It's kind of what his role is going to be. They brought in Anthony Lynn to be the offensive coordinator. Deuce Staley comes over from Philadelphia to be an offensive assistant, maybe running back coach. We got a hand in the dirt head coach, Dan Campbell. We got a hand in the dirt former running back, Anthony Lynn. We got a Aaron Glenn is going to be the defensive coordinator, former defensive back for years with the Giants, played in the league for a while, the Jets. Sorry. And then had been with the Saints for the last few years with Campbell. And then, so they just have a lot of former players. Campbell himself was a former player. This team's going to run the football. They are going to probably be the one team that feels like they're left into the early 2000s. Obviously, massive personnel issues around what's happening at quarterback there because we don't know what's going on with Stafford and all those things. So, yeah, massive, massive decisions there. Latest one is Nick, the Eagles. I'm sorry. Nick, how do you pronounce this? Sirianni. Nick Sirianni coming over from the Colts, had been the offensive coordinator for the last couple years. Previously had been with the Chargers. But again, the Eagles are kind of going back with Sirianni to get into that Frank Wright mind, right? Frank Wright was a big part of what led the Eagles to the Super Bowl win a few years ago. They really want to revive Carson Wentz, it sounds like. And we know, Reich was the coordinator for Philly during that 2-year run. They're bringing in new offensive coordinator as well, Shane Steichen, who'd come over from the Chargers. Steichen and Sirianni had been on staff together with the Chargers for a number of years, and obviously have a good rapport with Sirianni being an offensive mind, Steichen being an offensive mind as well. PFF grades play callers, and they were really bullish on Shane Steichen last year, despite obviously some of the coaching decisions we thought from a head coaching standpoint from the Chargers. Steichen had some success with, Herbert in his first year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, obviously with the Wentz and Hurts situation. But I don't know what to expect. Obviously that's a winnable division. Dallas is going to be better and back in the mix, obviously, if they get a healthy Dak. But some of the other ones, including Dallas hired Dan Quinn to be their defensive coordinator. Again, former Falcons coach. He's stepping in there. Let's see what happens. You've seen these guys. Some guys just don't have it as a head coach. Todd Bowles is a great example. Todd Bowles did not have a lot of success as a head coach. But again, now back as a coordinator, has taken his defense to the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. Some guys just are better being coordinators and are more comfortable in that role. Maybe that's Dan Quinn in Dallas. Also, the Raiders added Gus Bradley. He's familiar with the division, having been, in Los Angeles with the Chargers for the last few years. So that helps some continuity there. He's familiar with Mahomes and all the other guys there in the division. Rams added, since they lost their DC to the Chargers as a head coach, Raheem Morris comes over to be the defensive coordinator for Sean McVay. Morris did not get a shot as a head coach, but did a great job as an interim. And again, let's see if he can continue that defense being a top 5 unit. Obviously, more than likely he does with the talent that they have there. Bears added Sean Desai. Looks like he was part of that Fangio tree for the last few years. He's going to be now defensive coordinator with the Bears. And then a few GMs. Denver made a move. George Patton, again, just Elway moving to the side and letting someone who's been in this role take over. He'd been really part of that Minnesota Spielman group for the last few years. They've had a lot of good drafts, a lot of good talent. That's a good move, I think, for the Broncos moving forward. Carolina adds a new GM, Scott Fitterer, coming over from Seattle. Again, Seattle's had a lot of success for the last decade, being attached to Matt Rule and Joe Brady. That's a good place to be. They really outperformed expectations this year, exceeding their win total. They had a really young defense. Teddy Bridgewater was a massive disappointment. They're one of their best offensive players. Christian McCaffrey doesn't play for almost the entire season, and they still had a pretty good season. So if they can add to that roster, that's going to be encouraging. And then Washington added Martin Mayhem, who had been in Detroit for a number of years, and kind of feels like a meh signing for Washington. But, we'll see. They, again, big decision at quarterback there for Washington. And, I don't know what to make of that franchise, what's going on there. But, yeah, we'll see. I mean, lots of interesting ones. Again, the Houston one is still pending there. And, again, that's all contingent on what happens with Watson. So let's look briefly through the free agents. And I want to show you a little bit of some of the bigger names, right? We talked about the draft. We talked about, some of the salary cap, dollars that are out there for people. But let's talk about some of the main positions. And I'll just focus on, for the sake of time, keep it, not so hand in the dirt. We'll stay with some of the fantasy relevant guys, right? We just talked about some offensive coordinators. Again, these things matter. When we're on the clock in best ball, when we're looking to speculate in the draft, when we're, any of these things, we need to know what's different from last year. And, these situations are massive. So quarterback is interesting. There is really one guy that's a difference maker in free agency, and that is going to be Dak Prescott. And I can't imagine a scenario where the Cowboys, I don't understand how the Cowboys haven't already taken care of him, so I don't want to say that I can't see a scenario which they don't. But here we are. Prescott's the big one. Again, with the movement with Stafford and Watson and the quarterbacks coming in the draft, there's not a lot of other spots for guys getting outright jobs. You might have a spot where, say, a Cam Newton or, maybe a Ryan Fitzpatrick or an Andy Dalton or Mitch Trubisky is in a competing role. But it'd be hard to understand a scenario where one of these teams simply hands the guy the keys to run it back. I guess there's a chance where Mitch is given the keys in Chicago to run it back for maybe one more year under a franchise tag, or maybe they sign him to a small deal. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens there. It doesn't seem like Cam's in a spot where he's going to get a job by himself to strictly run it back. So it's really going to be Watson and Stafford, the draft picks, and then Dak, if he even becomes a quote-unquote free agent. I'd expect Dallas to do the right thing there and take care of him sooner than later. We'll see. I mean, like I said, I would have expected them to have already done so. So the fact that they haven't, I should not expect them with any level of confidence to do anything for sure. Running back position is interesting. We really have seen it obviously evolve, especially in fantasy, daily fantasy, best ball. We just have so few guys that are alphas at the position. Christian McCaffrey, obviously, when he was healthy, even a guy like Alvin Kamara, who we consistently draft inside the top 5 at the position, is a 16 touch per game guy, mostly. Sprinkling of carries, shares that workload, and then gets work in the passing game. The Derrick Henrys of the world are very, very few and far between. So for the most part, you would expect every team to address the position or add to their depth. The big one here that jumps out at me, not even free agent per se, but it's A.J. Dillon, right? So we have Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, both guys drafted together in Green Bay years ago, now both free agents. Would it surprise me if they re-signed one? No. But they went out and drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round, really incorporated him into the offense a little bit more as the season went along. So that's interesting to see if he's going to be someone that we're bullish on in best ball. Maybe we should be. Landing spot for Jones will be interesting. I do think Williams is a talented back, but Jones is, I think, a difference maker at the position. Kenyon Drake bet on himself. Didn't work so well. What happens there? Is it Chase Edmonds' season, or they add someone to supplement, which I'm guessing they probably do. Where does Drake end up? He was a disappointment. So was James Conner this season. Seemed like he had the clearest path to a fairly heavy bell cow role, maybe at least a 70-30 split with someone else, and he just really couldn't make anything of it. And that was a disappointment. He is a free agent. Chris Carson is an interesting one. Carson being in Seattle with a run-first offense under Schottenheimer, I'm sorry. What happens in Seattle with a new offensive coordinator? Does he come back? That's a nice position to be in. Seattle likes to run the football. It sounds like even though they're making a change, that they still want to live and die by that philosophy. So Seattle's running back position in the offseason is something that we need to watch. Obviously, with Penny, all the issues he's had in the offseason, they've added guys like Travis Homer over the years and stuff in the draft. But I imagine they address the position somehow in the offseason. Leonard Fournette, aforementioned running back decision that the Bucs will have to make in the offseason. He's been good down the stretch for them, so they're not great, but like I said, I would say good. He's been average. He's been fine, been replacement level. But again, we'll get a job somewhere in the offseason, and we'll be a part of at least one team's running back mix. Wide receivers are interesting. There are a couple guys that are difference makers, I guess I would say. for their respective teams. For the love of God, can we please get Allen Robinson a solid above-average quarterback just once in his career? Obviously, years with Bortles and all the mess going down in Jacksonville and then having to deal with all of the Chicago quarterback situations over the last few years with Trubisky and Foles. Yeah, he's going to be a big one. Corey Davis revived himself this year. Top 5 pick. Really was great for the better part of this year. Disappeared in the playoffs. Seemed like he was not happy with the way he was used down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, he would be a nice addition to any team that needs a wide receiver. Detroit has decisions to make at the receiver position. Jones is up there in age. And it was really good. It's been really good for the most part of his career. And still, I think, has a little bit of juice left. Don't think he gets a big deal, but still worthwhile. Will Fuller, Curtis Samuel, both very interesting. Chris Godwin, I would imagine, is a priority for Tampa in the offseason. Go back to Fuller real quick. What happens with him in Houston? His value and I think the thought of him is very different without Deshaun Watson. So that would be interesting to see. Samuel feels like he's gone. I think he really saw a increase in usage down the stretch and I think made the most of it. So Juju Smith-Schuster, really young, and again, showed maybe he's not an alpha per se, but a nice addition to a team. And again, lots of difference makers here at the wide receiver position. There's one more that is not on this list, but he's on this list. Kenny Golladay. Again, business decision, I think, this year had been like questionable around Thanksgiving and then just never came back. I think he just knew it was a sinking ship and it wasn't a playoff team and it was just making sure he was healthy heading into a free agent year. Again, questions abound there with the quarterback, obviously an entirely new front office, coaching staff, all those things. Do they sign him to a to a 1-year deal? Do they franchise him? Whatever. The Golladay thing is going to be very interesting. Some other guys here that are noteworthy too. Obviously, AJ Green, that opens up some targets, I think, for some of the younger guys there in Cincinnati. T. Higgins mostly continue to be dominant down the stretch. I think he will be. Antonio Brown, I'm sure, will try to run it back in Tampa if he's smart. David Moore, my boy, finally gets a chance to maybe get out and get a more active role. Sammy Watkins probably not going to find $9 million out there in the free agent market again. But again, even some of the other guys, these Rashad Perriman, Rashad Higgins, some of these guys can make an impact, and receivers make an impact. They're more valuable, more important than running backs are. And hopefully we see some of these guys make a difference. Really want to see what happens with A-Rob and Kenny Golladay. Those are going to be the big ones. So that wraps us up for this episode. Again, thank you so much for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Again, come back next week. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl. We'll look into exotics. We'll look into all the props, all the weird props, all the cool ways to break down the Super Bowl. Again, don't forget to hit that like button. If you've hung out this long, I really appreciate you. Please hit that like button. Share it. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We'll be back every Monday with a new episode. And again, that way you don't miss any of the other great stuff going on here at the FTN Network. So, signing off for this week. We'll see you next time.